Agent Morris with the NSA.
We have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft.
The traffic is quite luminous and is exhibiting some non-ballistic motion. Over.
Move very rapidly at any speed or whether any direction it wanted to go. Why it could change and go to the right or the left or go crossways without hesitating a bit.
What do you think it was?
Well, if they call it a flying saucer, that's what it is.
EWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over.
Negative. We don't want to report.
Look, it wasn't my worst Wednesday night.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Anomaly-NOW Weekly News RoundUp for the 501c3 Anomaly Institute, aka the Anomaly Archives, straight out of Austin, Texas. I'm your host, Miles Lewis. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for hitting the like, subscribe, all that stuff. Please subscribe to the podcast if you'd like, and consider becoming a Patreon. You can follow along with tonight's show by going to our Flipboard, flipboard.com/@Anomaly Archives, where you'll find a ton of links specific to tonight's show, but also from the thousands and thousands of links that we've been flipping over there for the last many years. So we have a couple of months ago launched our Patreon patron donor support system. That's at patreon.com/Anomaly Archives. And if you go there right now, you can find a link to the next monthly meeting that's available to our Anomaly Academy Cadet tier and higher. That's going to be Joshua Cutchin presenting SoulCraft, Understanding the UFO as a Death Symbol, which is a lecture based on his fantastic, massive magnum opus, Ecology of Souls, about the importance of death as it relates to UFOs and the paranormal. It sounds grim, but it's actually a very fascinating subject that he has done all the hard work and heavy lifting on so that he can help bring this information to the masses. Really looking forward to that. That's coming up Saturday, August 24th. And again, you can go to patreon.com and find out more about us over there. There's a number of different ways you can support us, and you can join for free and just get the updates that are going to be coming more fast and furious very, very soon. Well, as I said, you can go to our Flipboard, or you can go to our website, anomalyarchives.org. And I always forget to mention this, but if you want to contact us, you can send email to contact@anomalyarchives.org, or you can call our phone number and leave voicemail at 512-842-9046. That's 512-842-9046. And you can send us stuff via snail mail through the U.S. Postal Service at Anomaly Archives, P.O. Box 152252, Austin, Texas 78715. That's P.O. Box 152252, Austin, Texas 78715. So what news do we have in store for you tonight? Well, it's UFO heavy, folks, as often is. But before we get to that, I did want to share with you this event coming up. If you're in the Austin, Texas area or the Central Texas area, and if you are interested in psychedelics and art, specifically mushroom, mycology-oriented psychedelic art, you might consider going to this ArtUSco gallery opening that's starting this Friday, August 16th, and running for about a week, I think. Yes, August 16th through, September 28th. So the grand opening is happening this Friday, starting at 6 p.m., going till 10 p.m. And you can find out more about this at ArtUSco.com. And a good friend of mine is one of several tons of artists that are going to be featured here. I think they say over 40 talented artists. Realms of Fungi, apparently this is their second time they've done this event. Step into the world where art and mycology intertwine in the most whimsical way. Realms of Fungi is our annual mushroom-inspired exhibit featuring the creative works of over 40 talented artists. And like I say, this is going from this Friday, August 16th to September 28th, 2024. And you can go to ArtUSco.com, and you might find that interesting. Check that out. Well, like I said, tons of stuff at the Flipboard. Again, not gonna get to everything. There's just too much to cover. I just found out today that the SCU, Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, has launched their own podcast. I can't wait to hear that. Tanner Boyle has a new article up at his, now I'm forgetting the name, but it's a great blog, and this article is called Some Primary Perceptions of Cleve Baxter. And I just got finished listening to his interview with a documentarian who's done a documentary on a never-released Mothman movie that was in production before the big mainstream one came out. And we are going to cover this over here, Political Weird. And that's by somebody I really respect, Erik Davis. This is E-R-I-K Davis, Erik Davis, not Eric with a C Davis. Both very interesting people. Erik Davis with a K is a fantastic religious scholar, professor, and somebody who I highly recommend. Erik Davis is the fringe physicist associated with Hal Puthoff and the Wilson UFO memos and whatnot. But this article came through my email inbox just today. And again, it's called Political Weird by Erik Davis, and you can find it over at burningshore.com. This is not intended as a political statement. I just find his perspective on things to be very important, and I'm not going to read the whole article. It's pretty lengthy, and he himself says, there's other better hot takes out there, but there are some things I wanted to touch on, and there may be a spoiler or two, but it's been a wild couple of weeks for the word weird now that Kamala Harris's VP choice has fallen on Tim Walz, the fellow who got this whole thing rolling a few weeks ago, proclaiming to the Morning Joe crew that, quote, "These guys are just weird." The term has become an active, if no doubt, transient player in the 2024 presidential campaign. Having written a book on the subject, 2019's High Weirdness, I can only reply as expected. How weird? For a couple weeks now, folks have pestered me about the term strange new twist of fate. As regular readers know, I am not much of a hot take guy, let alone a party politic opinionator. So forgive me for not diving into the phrase sooner. I am trying to have a vacation, damn it. I am not sure I have that much to add. Well, I think he does, and I highly recommend you go check this out. He says here, in High Weirdness, I argue that weird is kind of a wastebasket term. A lot of us drop it regularly, but we don't think about it much, and we often use it to categorize the sort of things or situations that are nebulous enough beyond or between good and evil, or even good and bad, that we don't know what else to do with them. Drugs, or tequila, can get weird in a good way, one that accords with our desire for intoxicating surprises and release. Crazy good sex can be weird, but sexual advances from people we find gross can be weird in a pretty bad way. Physical symptoms that aren't quite painful or worrisome can be weird, as can all children if we are paying attention. AI is intensely weird. Then there's fringe phenomena like deja vus or synchronicities, experiences that we might describe as weird because we want to voice their uncanny power without invoking any supernatural claims. This use, in turn, reflects the pre-modern sense of the term, which begins with the Anglo-Saxon noun weird, W-Y-R-D, which looms as a figure of sometimes personified fate. Shakespeare shaped it into an adjective for his weird sisters in Macbeth, who not coincidentally resemble the three Norns of destiny. The eerie dimension of the term emerges from the sense of unspooling, if erratic doom, which informs the word in Romantic poetry and the Gothic through 20th century pulps like Weird Tales or E.C.'s Weird Science, all of which fashion the weird into something like the poor man's uncanny. I identify three contemporary domains of the weird in the book. First, there is weird as a genre, a sensibility found in the Lovecraftian Venn diagram overlapping horror, fantasy, and cosmic science fiction. This peculiar aesthetic also seeps into the second domain of the term, the weird as a description of a reality that, while remaining real, sometimes appears to be paranormal or anomalous or radically counterintuitive. The notion of the weird as a feature of concrete reality is embraced not only by cryptozoologists or occult conspiracy theorists, but in a different sense by actual quantum physicists who have been describing some of the bizarre features of their research as quantum weirdness or strangeness since the 1970s. Finally, there is the meaning before us now. Weirdness as deviancy, as a way to characterize persons who live or behave or believe far from the norm. As far as I can find, this is a distinctly 20th century development, and one with more than a hint of perversity, especially through the noun weirdo. In this usage, weird has some rough parallels with queer, another nounish adjective with a supernatural inflection, a tang of the fae, that comes to mark threatening non-normative sexuality and is eventually transformed into a positive value, or at least a tolerated identity. When R. Crumb named his 1980s comic magazine Weirdo, he was celebrating the subaltern identity associated with adventurous sex, drugs, and a fascination with peculiar beliefs or subcultural refusal. So this article goes on. It's got some links to some video. There's that image, "Stop calling us weird," from the QAnon shaman who became so widely known in households across America and the world due to January 6th. So, but there's another twist to the taunt. As many commentators have pointed out, the donkeys, meaning the Democrats, have long tolerated and even celebrated marginalized and even scapegoated identities by weaving them into an ever-expanding rainbow of diversity. In this sense, the donkeys are the party of the weird, becoming the formerly weird, though of course without using the term itself, since that might offend somebody. Homosexuals were seriously, even repulsively weird to vast swaths of Americans only a handful of decades ago, and they are so no longer. In this, progressive politics resembles the Star Trek narrative universe, which so often serves up seemingly alien aliens who reveal enough human characteristics over the episode to give them a run at joining the Federation. Are you a kid who wants to scramble gender and modify your body with grammar and sex-change drugs? An immigrant from an arcane and exotic land? Are you visibly, or even baroquely, differently abled? Come on down! So this article does go on quite lengthily, and as I say, it's got some good links. And he ends with, he reads this poem from Keats. As a guy who made too much of the word weird, and as an abiding fondness for the marvels and discomforts and ambiguous peculiarities the term has covered over the centuries, I admit a certain vexed grief that scientific racists, Pizzagate suckers, and really nasty Christians have been invited into the ranks. But this sense of linguistic loss is a familiar feature of the internet era, which so readily parasites the cooler words of our common tongue, gamifying them, weaponizing them, and reducing them to fodder for apps, memes, and online influence campaigns. It's the sort of disappointment I recently experienced when I reread one of my favorite English romantic poems from my lit major days, Keats' To Autumn. I read it out loud and was really luxuriating in the rich language as the poem soared to its final 4 lines. And full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne. Hedge crickets sing, and now the treble soft, the redbreast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. I don't care about Musk changing the name to X. That last line is a digital ruin. Reading Twitter here is like hearing a cell phone going off in a concert hall, or finding a QR code on the corner of a Botticelli. And so I stand in solidarity with my fellow freaks of the weirdosphere, left or right, in between or off the map. We bemoan the politicization of weird. But what are you going to do? The Chamber of Commerce mantras, keep Austin weird, or keep Portland weird, were bad enough. Keep weird is even worse. At least this thing still has teeth. Now, a few flashbacks from last week. I remember I was talking about the news article about Philip Corso, who allegedly was the one who reverse engineered or coordinated all the reverse engineering of crash retrieval materials. This all detailed in his book, The Day After Roswell, I think is the title, and how John Greenwald has recently obtained some documents through the FOIA process that show an agency characterizing Philip Corso as a parasite for often trafficking in, if not salacious, accusatory, or just bad intel and rumors. And I had said I was going to read a bunch of bits from 2 of Jacques Vallée's journals, Forbidden Science Volumes 4 and 5. Totally forgot to do that. I think I'm going to do that as a separate recording and put that out for patrons over at patreon.com. But in the meantime, there were some other things in the last few weeks, like people down on the Texas coast seeing either an alligator or a crocodile wallowing in the surf, which in some cases is not that unusual as a way that they do to get parasites off of their bodies. Well, I bring all this up because flashback to last week. Well, now we have several news articles. This one from the Chron.com that used to chronicle alligator a trio found swimming in lake close to Austin. Now this close to Austin in this case is, I guess it's within 45 minutes, so that's close, but it's just weird that they mention Austin. It's not the first time alligators have appeared in areas in Texas where they are not commonly seen this year. And then there's another one over here at Fox 7 Austin, alligators found in Marble Falls. That's more accurate. And I was going to just play a little bit of this video here. Check this out. Not the whole thing, though.
Alligators, you expect to see them near the swamps of Florida or maybe near the Louisiana bayou, but in the lakes of central Texas?
Crazy. We're not used to seeing them, so it's gained a lot of attention.
According to police, back on July 26th, a resident on Colorado Drive spotted an alligator along the banks of Lake Marble Falls. The same resident then noticed 3 other baby alligators in the water.
Something like this. So 3 of them, and then 1 big one.
The city's animal control officer responded and saw the 3 gators in the lake, but didn't see any on land. Her reaction?
I think it was consistent with everything else. Oh my gosh, there may be alligators in the water.
Marble Falls Police Captain James Cole says he's pretty sure this is a first here.
It's just something new to us, you know. We'd be lucky to catch a fish down here.
There have not been any new sightings since the initial one, despite animal control returning here several times.
She's looking for tracks. She's looking for slide marks from the land to the water. She hasn't seen anything yet, so we're really not sure where to go from here.
Texas Parks and Wildlife saying their biologist in Burnett County has received the reports from animal control, but currently has not been able to visually confirm the presence of an alligator, though seldom.
Anyway, we'll have the link to that. You can watch the whole report. It doesn't seem like they're inclined to do anything about it unless the gators get aggressive, I suppose. Meanwhile, another flashback or follow-up. You know, we have been talking about how Simon Holland, you know, this guy with the crazy hair, has been claiming in his videos on his YouTube channel that he's in contact with somebody that's made the claim that there has, in fact, been an alien civilization signature and data detected and extracted from radio telescope information, specifically stuff that was processed by you and I through the SETI at Home program back in the day here in the United States or all around the world when you used to run your computers, SETI at Home program to churn the data overnight. He's actually gotten some mainstream coverage here. This is over at, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, cidehome.com, CIDEHOM.com. This is, I think, a French news outlet. Not really sure, but it seems to be some mainstream news coverage of his claims. And this is the Google Translate, the Chrome browser's translation. Have we already detected a signal from an extraterrestrial form of life? In January 27, 2011, Frank Drake, one of the fathers of SETI Extraterrestrial Intelligent Life Search Program, told our colleagues at Ciel et Espace the following about briefly captured radio signals. Quote, I suspect that a small fraction of them were of extraterrestrial origin. At the time, the spectacular statement went relatively unnoticed and was quickly blamed on the program's need for funding, which led even the most respectable of scientists to make thunderous declarations. Now, 13 years later, and with Frank Drake joining the stars in 2022, a colorful character by the name of Simon Holland has been relaying on his YouTube channel for the past few months some quite extraordinary claims reminiscent of Frank Drake's words and likely to constitute the discovery of the millennium. The SETI Intelligent Life Search Program would indeed have recorded unintentional radio transmissions from stellar systems located at most a few tens of light years away. The signals would have been found in SETI's raw data, but would have gone unnoticed until a team of Italian mathematicians, inspired by the work of Professor Claudio Maccone, applied a new method of analysis to them, the Carhunen-Loewe transform, far more powerful than the Fourier transform previously used by the SETI program, and capable of detecting signals embedded in noise down to incredibly low signal-to-noise ratios. They fully admit, you know, they've only been able to vet some of this information, but they say, for all these reasons, after weighing the pros and cons, and even though we have been unable to verify any of the assertions made, we have decided to broadcast this interview in spite of everything. And so there is a back and forth there with some links to some of the videos in question. Anyway, just thought that was some interesting follow-up, and hey, way to go, Simon, Professor Simon Holland, getting some attention for those claims. Hopefully they will bear out, and maybe we'll very soon get some evidence that there is some intelligent life out there beyond the Earth. Meanwhile, over on the internet, Henry's Substack, Henry Bauer, Why What We Believe is Often Wrong and Some Consequences. This is a very nice little article about just the fact that, we all base our everyday lives, decision-making on assumptions, often assumptions that are incorrect, and explores the reasons why we believe what we believe. Some of the things I think worth noting here, quote, humans and groups feel obliged to be loyal to the group's tenets, to not rock the boat or blow the whistle, even if they privately no longer share the group's communally expressed belief. Groupthink prevails. The bitter lesson is that disputes can rarely be settled by discussing, arguing over what the facts are, because opposing sides interpret evidence with different biases. It is only in purely technical matters that indisputable facts may sometimes be available, and then only with rather simple systems like laboratory experiments in chemistry. Even in science, quote unquote, in complex matters, cosmology, say, unproven or unprovable assumptions determine viewpoints. Thus, some astrophysicists continue to prefer the steady state theory of the universe over the Big Bang theory, and evidence of a sort can be cited to support each of these views. And this gets to this idea, again, that I became aware of through someone talking about Charles Fort, Skylar Alphagren, talking about intermediatism. Science is intermediate. It's intermediate knowledge. It's not an end-all or be-all. Oh, we did science and we proved this is the way things are. Well, you proved it to the best of your knowledge at that time. There's some other interesting bits here talking about outsiders and how outsiders can often be the source of new insights. Difficult to acknowledge is the possibility that some of one's own views might be wrong, not in keeping with the objective reality of the world. This is grounds for serious introspection, as well as good reason to practice humility over what one believes to be true. Quote, when good scientists step into a field from the outside, their views, not yet conditioned by the field's standard thinking, can sometimes really shake things up. That was the case with this year's winners of the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, awarded to Australia's Peter Doherty and Switzerland's Rolf Zinkernagel for their insights into the inner mechanisms of the immune system, unquote. Many discoveries by outsiders or mavericks are listed by Harman and Dietrich, and evidence from psychology is adduced that being an outsider confers benefits in conceiving innovations. Of course, not all significant advances have been stimulated by outsiders. Nevertheless, the influence of culture means that there are more benefits to abiding with the status quo than there are incentives to dissent, let alone rebel. As George Bernard Shaw put it, progress is stimulated by unreasonable people. Anyway, it's not that long of an article. There's some good citations that can lead to some other good reading that you all might find interesting. Now, moving fully into the UFO realm, I hear a little bit from our own local KXAN.com, a local NBC affiliate. Mysterious lights over Austin. Can an app help identify UFOs? And I'll just go ahead and play a little bit of this and provide the link in the show notes after the show.
There is one thing that we get a lot of emails about here at KXAN. It is when there is some mysterious lights up in the sky above Austin. They often create quite the stir.
Yeah, people think, what is that? Is that something that's unusual? Is it a UFO? Well, Elon Musk's Starlight-Link satellites is what it could be. KXAN's Erik explores how a new app is helping scientists document these and other lights in the sky, hopefully helping us separate UFOs from our own creations.
Go to SpaceX, go direct to south.
More than 6,000 new, tiny satellites launched into space by SpaceX since 2019, changing the lights in our night sky.
Bearing separation confirmed.
While they provide internet to people around the world, they also offer up confusion.
With Starlink and other phenomena, you see more and more stuff that you can't explain right away.
Professor Michael Endel says that with the increase in these satellites also comes an increase in UFO reporting.
We've been getting a lot of reports of kind of these luminous tubes or cigar shapes.
Alejandro Rojas works with Enigma Labs. The UFO researcher says that Starlink satellites have a couple unique behaviors that cause confusion.
When Starlink are first deployed out of the spacecraft, they're very close, so they look like one object. They don't look like a string of several objects.
Enigma Labs is a crowdsourcing app that collects photos of UFOs along with location data.
One of the things that we've heard from the Pentagon and from NASA is that a lot of the issue with this topic is there's not enough data. So that's exactly what we're trying to do, is gather more data.
The more observations, the more evidence comes in, the better for whatever you are investigating.
As for Starlink,
people who report them, they get a little disappointed because they really think they've gotten some.
And this reminds me, of course, what we reported a few weeks back, of the Red Rocks multi-witness sighting of a supposed cigar-shaped craft. This actually, and I had mentioned how Micah Hanks had suggested that what they saw was likely a misidentification of the Starlink satellite train appearing like a cigar-shaped or tube-shaped object. Certainly, some of the photos they showed there, I'm not sure if those are literally Starlink satellites, so obviously a lot of that footage was. What I also got a kick out of is Alejandro Rojas in front of that mural there. That is, I believe, the inside of the Roswell Museum and Research Library in Roswell, New Mexico. Not sure if that was like what you see behind me, green screen, or if he was really there when they recorded this. And obviously that was just a kind of a local fluff piece because, of course, Elon Musk is here in Austin with his various businesses and making Texans feel all kinds of different ways about him and his tech companies, especially because of the rocket launches in certain parts of the state. Meanwhile, going to probably go through these really fast. This is a really good article over at thehill.com. Why is the Pentagon's UFO office so clueless about UFOs? Great links, including links to the YouTube channel of the author of this opinion piece. I should say it's an op-ed. It's not technically by a staff journalist, by Merrick von Rennenkampf. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he links to some of the videos here on his YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/@Merrickever7858. We'll, again, have the links in the show notes. But it's interesting. So in some of these videos, he is interviewing former head of Arrow, Sean Kirkpatrick, and really just catching him being the ill-informed person that he is. It just talks about how error-riddled the Arrow report was and how, the head of the program, Sean Kirkpatrick, gets basic facts wrong and about these now most familiar UFO videos in our age. So you might want to go check that out. And the videos over at his channel are pretty good too. Meanwhile, over at sciencenews.org, this article, scientists are getting serious about UFOs. Here's why. Understanding what are now called UAPs is crucial for national security and aircraft safety. Not the most earth-shattering article, but I am enthused to see more like this. So, meanwhile, this book review by Greg Agigian, the historian whose book I'm reading. Greg Agigian is the author of After the Flying Saucers Came. Got it over here. Oops, can't see it. After the Flying Saucers Came is a global history of the UFO phenomenon, and still making my way through it, really enjoying that. But what he is reviewing here is a book called Alien Abduction in the Cinema, a history from the 1950s to today by a Paul Meehan, Meehan, author of numerous books about the history of horror and science fiction films. In them, he has covered such topics as vampires, haunted houses, doppelgangers in space. One of his most intriguing is his 1998 book, Saucer Movies, a ufological history of the cinema. And then this new one, Alien Abduction in the Cinema. There's some very interesting insights in here. It's a very short read, nice, concise review. Overall, Meehan finds a number of patterns over time in cinematic depictions of extraterrestrial abductions. Throughout the history of sci-fi films, coercive encounters routinely contain prominent story elements found in abduction cases common to the last third of the 20th century. Humanoid extraterrestrials, kidnappings taking place in isolated and intimate spaces, medical procedures and implants, interbreeding, and mind control. Nevertheless, Meehan points out there have been relatively few movies attempting to portray real case histories, and these few were limited to the period 1975 to 1993. Indeed, over the past 2.5 decades, filmmakers have mostly used the trope of alien abduction as an excuse for making horror movies that have placed their emphasis on scares, violence, torture, and gore. Quote, by the second decade of the 21st century, Meehan emphasizes, movies on the abduction theme had largely become unmoored from allegedly nonfiction accounts of the phenomenon and science fiction. It reminds me of how sci-fi writer and producer Tracy Torme, the son of Mel Torme, who was involved in the production of Fire in the Sky, the Travis Walton story, issued a public apology to the UFO community when the film was about to come out because he was very frustrated by the fact that the production companies wanted to turn it into a horror movie and so radically changed the very basic elements of the story. I mean, it's still the basic story, but they just horrified it. They turned the aliens into these very much evil-seeming, torturing entities when in fact none of what you see happen on the ship in the movie is consistent with Travis Walton's actual story, whatever you believe about that. Okay, I hate even bringing this next one up, but I gotta keep reminding folks, I see some shows covering these Peruvian alien mummies, quote unquote, and it just makes me so angry. I really can't say enough against this kind of aspect of the UFO community. This is not necessarily a good outlet, dailymail.co.uk, but as I've said before, sometimes they actually have a lot of good reporting. They often have a lot of eye candy in the form of photographs relevant to whatever they're talking about. In this article from earlier this month, Britain's top UFO expert, Dr. David Clark, gives his very surprising verdict on 2-foot alien mummies found in an ancient Peruvian burial site. I'm going to jump down to the end here. Some of you might remember military pilot Ryan Graves was making an appearance at this Mexico UFO Congress event some time back that then suddenly Jaime Maussan took over the event and brought out these ridiculous-looking alien mummies. There's Ryan, there's Jaime, and there's one of these, it looks like a powdered, like a cake, something, which is a meme that was going around. And I just see people continuing to cover these other mummies, and it just infuriates me. But towards the midpoint here, with this image there, the Metapet creature, which was claimed to be an alien, the common thread that links all the recent dubious claims about alien fossils is TV personality Jaime Maussan, the man who ambushed the Mexico UFO conference. The 71-year-old has been nicknamed the P.T. Barnum of ufology after the notorious 19th century showman and hoaxer for his promotion of numerous fake photographs and videos of UFOs and aliens over the years. One famous example is the Metapet creature, seen here, a small cat-like animal with a large head, supposedly found in a trap by Mexican farmers in 2007. Maussan claimed on one of his hugely popular TV shows it was an alien, but a Channel 4 investigation found the creature was in fact nothing more than a skinned monkey. Then in May 2015, Maussan displayed the images of another alleged alien body before a live audience at an event in Mexico City's National Auditorium. Several thousand tickets were sold after a YouTube teaser claimed a group of UFO researchers would exclusively reveal 2 35mm color slides of an unusual body in a glass case. They claimed it was linked to the famous 1947 UFO crash at Roswell, New Mexico. Well, we'll get back to that. But yes, the group that I was privileged to be a fly on the wall of found the explanation and discovered that it was in fact the mummified body of a 2-year-old boy, a Native American child, and Jaime was doing his usual sensationalistic money-making scheme on that. Now, English teacher Chris Albeck, author of the new book Alien Artifacts, says his research has revealed the current controversy is a repeat of rumors and hoaxes about alien mummies discovered in Peru that can be traced back 160 years. Almost exactly 150 years ago in 1878, there were press stories of a mummified body that was found by a chemist and his team inside an enormous meteorite in, you guessed it, Peru. So the rest of the article goes into that. But what this all reminds me, of course, is you can see this article from last year over at dailygrail.com by our good friend, RPJ Red Pill Junkie Miguel Romero from September of last year. And yeah, there he is, his caricature of Jaime Maussan as a P.T. Barnum character, because that's what he is. And this was all about that crash UFO conference where Jaime just made fools of everybody. And this latest mummy that is being claimed to be alien. Here is a list of 44 alleged, probable, almost certainly, hoaxes that Jaime has gotten behind in his decades of promoting such crap. Again, you can go to Roswell Slides Research Group roswellslides.com and hear the whole story about how the group was able to decipher this. You'll see this here, this white box in the image there by this mummified body, which again turned out to be that of a Native American child. And Jaime was literally going so far as to encourage people to find the body and dig it up before he allegedly knew what it was. But the whole escapade was almost 10 years ago, and we're still having to deal with this kind of crap. It's infuriating. Okay, getting close, maybe. Meanwhile, over at ufos-scientificresearch.blogspot.com, this is Keith Bastroffield and Pauline Wilson's site. Police Executives UAP Reference Guide. You can check this out. According to their website, the Major Cities Chiefs Association is, quote, a professional organization of police executives representing the largest cities in the United States and Canada. MCCA provides a unique forum for urban chiefs, sheriffs, and other law enforcement executives to share ideas, experiences, and strategies. Anyway, they've published 2 recent Futurist Initiative resources, Volume 1 on artificial intelligence and Volume 2 on unidentified anomalous phenomena. It is an 11-page reference guide on UAP. Check out, here is a scan of it. Interesting stuff. It's from June, apparently. Of course, this reminds me of what came out years ago, which I reported on in 2011. I incorporated into my UFOs and Consciousness lecture information about the FEMA Fire Officer's Guide to Disaster Control, which has Chapter 13, Lucky 13, Enemy Attack and UFO Potential, where they talk about, as I've said before on the show, the dangers of approaching a UFO. And they even cite Jacques Vallée in this chapter, who cautions that we should consider psychic effects such as space-time distortions experienced by percipients of craft-like devices which appear to fade away, dematerialize, and then reappear, of alien, strange voices or thoughts that may affect involuntary changes in the manner in which witnesses may react in such circumstances, and more. So again, this is just examples of how civic authorities have incorporated UFOs into their work to educate their personnel on such matters. Meanwhile, and I think we're moving into the end here. So I've often referenced Micah Hanks. I think he's a great journalist. He does work over at The Debrief, coordinates the articles there. He's the editor, and of course, he's been a long-running podcaster with weekly shows available various platforms, and you can go to micahhanks.com. That's MICAH Hanks.com/podcast. Will get you to the free version of his show. There's also a paid version, but he's been doing a series on very interesting issues surrounding Operation Paperclip, and as he described it, the Operation Paperclip of the East and how that relates to the Roswell controversy. And for those of you who've been paying attention, you probably are aware that there was a version of Paperclip whereby, just like the United States brought over these Nazis from Germany after the World War II ended, they also brought over Japanese folks from what was called Unit 731. And this was like the Japanese Mangala human experimentation biowarfare research lab that did horrible human experimentation. And that human experimentation and research was brought back to the United States and continued. And we've got links. I've created a page over at Anomaly Archives about Unit 731 with links to some of this material. But this all relates also to the best book I've seen on this by Nick Redfern called Body Snatchers in the Desert, The Horrible Truth at the Heart of the Roswell Mystery, and all this other stuff. Well, it just reminds me that back in July of 2005, in our then monthly e-newsletter, we reported on Roswell Bombshell, Nick Redfern's ufological expose, Body Snatchers in the Desert, The Horrible Truth, the heart of the Roswell story. This is circa 2005. And I did a massive web trawling, and it just brings to light a veritable feast of almost forgotten information. And really what this, as much as I credit Nick Redfern for his work in this and bringing it to light, it really needs to be called the popular mechanics hypothesis. Because in July of 1997, Popular Mechanics put out an article at the end of which they said, quote, Popular Mechanics suspects the craft that crashed at Roswell will eventually be identified as either a U.S. attempt to re-engineer a second-generation Fugo, that's a Japanese balloon bomb, or a hybrid craft which uses both Fugo lifting technology and a Horton-shaped, inspired lifting body. That would be the flying wing from the Nazi Horton brothers. In either case, Japanese engineers and pilots brought to the U.S. after the war to work on the project could have been the dead alien bodies recovered at the crash site. All of which reminds us of John Keel was talking about Roswell. I wrote here, the biggest irony about this reemergence of the Fugo-Roswell hypothesis is that it comes on the heels of a recent raucous debate on the UFO Updates email list about the value of journalist John Keel's contribution to UFO research. Many of the field's best-known writers and researchers were lambasting Keel, who has been known for quite some time as not being afraid to invent evidence. Yet it appears that it was he who first wrote of the possibility that the 1947 Roswell crash was in fact a Fugo balloon. John Keel wrote about this theory in the March 1990 issue of Fate magazine. Anyway, I did a massive web trawling here, and there's a ton of information here about that hypothesis, and we continued to cover it on into December of 2005, which also happened to coincide with the death of the SETI at Home project. So coming full circle there. I was been curious, okay, so Roswell, happened in 1947, but became unknown until the 1980 book by Charles Berlitz and William Moore, The Roswell Incident, came out. And actually maybe, as early as 1978. Lots of other links that I'm not going to get to, but this is just a theme that I've come back to because for a long time I have mentioned to people that I think this is the most likely hypothesis about what happened at Roswell. It's dark and it's not something people want to believe. I wrote quite a bit about it in June of 2017, right around the time of the 70th anniversary. And when I went to Roswell for the first and only time and saw 4 or 5 different conferences, one of which is put on by this fellow Guy Malone, who, while he has a particularly religious, spiritual bent and perspective on the UFO phenomena, he too is in agreement with regard to the Roswell crash being, as Redfern puts forth in his book, Body Snatchers in the Desert, as well as a follow-up book called Roswell Conspiracy. I should just end that for now. Too much to go into. What I skipped over, not UFO related, and I'll close on this, is some Bigfoot stuff. So jumping wildly to a different topic, there's this When Roger Met Patty book review. The book When Roger Met Patty is by William Munns, M-U-N-N-S, from 2014. I'd never really heard of this book, but from what I gather from the review, which has a lot of grammatical errors in it, but if you can see past that sort of thing, it's a fun review that basically suggests that this person who wrote the book has a perfect life experience to report on whether the Patterson-Gimlin film was fake or could have been faked when it was shot back in the 60s. And it reminded me of something written by a friend of mine back in 2009 when I was publishing Anomaly magazine, and that is my friend Noah's analysis of the Patterson-Gimlin film. My friend is a skilled artist, and he's really good at anatomy. He knows his anatomy to draw human figures and so forth. And so he analyzed the Patterson film from an anatomy perspective and took away with the conclusion, after analyzing the film footage countless times, employing a degree of expertise in human and primate anatomy, and examining critically the analyses of forensic expert Jay Glickman of NASI, N-A-S-I, among others, is that the 1967 Patterson-Gimlin film does not and cannot depict a human being in a costume. It is a real, as yet uncatalogued animal, and most likely a primate of either ape-like or hominid human-like taxonomic classification that resides or once resided somewhere in the millions of square miles of human uninhabited forests of the Pacific Northwest. Now, this friend eventually completely renounced this article because he's a hardcore skeptic, and he just decided, I can't believe this, even though I wrote that I believe it and why I think rationally it's not a fake film. But it just goes into this realm of how people's brains, work. There was this one more article that's translated through Google Chrome, the Ukumar Wild Man These. Have to check that out. It's a very long article about Bigfoot-like creatures harassing people in South America. And I guess that's going to be it for tonight, folks. It's already gone on a little too long, but thank you for joining us. Really appreciate all the views. And if you can support us, that's great. If not, well, just keep on keeping on, and we'll see you on the flip side. Good night.